Frank Schwab, Jason Fitz, inside coverage. Frank, look, there's a lot to get to. We're going to get to every single game as we do every single Sunday. By the way, I'll tell you at the beginning, rate, review, subscribe, because we're going to go long. I don't want to have to tell you that at the end. Here's the thing, Frank. Before we get to any of these games, I sat there today, as you did, in a Buffalo Wild Wings watching all of the action, and I kept thinking the same thing. I don't remember. We always talk about parity in the NFL. That's cute. It's a cute concept. I don't remember the last time I saw such a divide in this league where there are 4 or 5 teams that every single Sunday I say, oh my God, because they're so good. And then there's like 10 teams that every Sunday I sit there and say, oh my God, because we have to watch that. Like the haves and have-nots were shining on Sunday. And Frank, like, if this were any other sport, we've been screaming it's broken. Like the bad is tragically bad in the NFL this year. And the good is really stinking exciting.
Look, I mean, I'm sure that's happened before. I don't want to overreact and say this is the first time I've ever.
Oh, come on, Frank, overreact with me. It's fun.
There are some teams that limp to the finish because they've lost their quarterback, or like the Saints have lost 2/3 of their offense or whatever. But I will say this, with 3 weeks left to go, it seems like more is decided than ever because of what you talked about, the haves and have-nots. We could pretty safely predict, 13 of the playoff teams right now? Like, there's not much drama to be decided there. Maybe a spot, maybe 2. MVP, we'll talk about that in a second. That's pretty much decided at this point. The number of Super Bowl contenders, I think, is as low as it's ever been. Like, there are just not many teams that we could say definitively, yes, that's a Super Bowl contender. Even like the Pittsburgh Steelers, who, I think I had them 5th in my power rankings this week. When I watch them today, I'm like, no, they're not it. They're not on the list. So are we down? Are we down to 4 Super Bowl contenders in mid-December? Like that seems low, but talk me into somebody else, right? So I think when we're talking about the haves and have-nots, I think that yes, the haves, very, very small number. There's that other tier of we're playoff teams, and we kind of know who they are. There's that tier of teams that's just like, can the season be done already? Because we can't even play football. This is just not competitive. It's not fun. And yes, so I think that separation is as clear as it's ever been. And we can see that in some of the matchups this week. Like, let's be honest. Like we were talking before we started hitting record. This is not a great week of football. Like we sit here, when it's good, we'll talk about how great it was. We'll talk about how excited we were. And there's storylines in every single game. That's why we touch on every one of them. But some of these games I'm sitting there watching and I'm like, oh my goodness, really? Like, I get it. Like, not everything you schedule in April is going to be great by December, but there's some bad matchups because there's this difference between the playoff teams, the contenders, and those, like you said, 8 to 10 teams that are just absolutely dead man walking at this point.
I want to help everybody before we get to the big game real quick. If you're listening in your car, if you're listening in your house, if you're listening in your headphones, say it with me. You're going to catch a theme here real quick. All right. You're going to feel good. Just say it loud. The Giants suck. The Raiders suck. The Patriots suck. The Jags suck. The Panthers suck. The Titans suck. The Browns suck. The Jets suck. I mean, and that's not even getting it. You know what, Bears? I'll give it. Give it with me, Chicago. The Bears suck. The Saints suck. I'm in 10 teams. So. I haven't even tried. That's just. You know what? I feel better. I feel better already.
That was cathartic, wasn't it? Yeah, it really helps you. By the way, do you feel like maybe we could talk about this during the episode, but let's just real quick. Am I wrong that there's only 4 Super Bowl contenders in the circle of trust? Is there a 5th? Is there a 5th team where you're like, yes? I guess I'll put the Vikings in there because I mean they kind of had a big day today, even though they didn't play. Like I guess you put the Vikings in there if you believe in them, but I don't know that I believe in them as a Super Bowl contender.
You're giving me Buffalo, Philly, Detroit, and Kansas City as your 4 Super Bowl.
Those are your 4 obvious ones, right?
I mean, you could push me into Minnesota. You could push me into 5.
If I said, all right, Fitz, we gotta bet a Super Bowl future. These 4 teams, though, you can't bet them. You feel comfortable? Would you feel comfortable putting your hard-earned money on the Vikings right now to win a Super Bowl? I get it, the great record, and there's no reason for me to sit here and downgrade them, but I don't know. I wouldn't be like, yes, oh, God, Vikings, of course. I don't know. Maybe I'm discounting them too easily, but I think we're down to 4. I think one of those 4 teams winning a Super Bowl. I feel pretty confident saying that.
If the Schwab and Fitz, the Schwitz was saying that, I said that very well so that we didn't have to get edited.
Yeah, right.
If we were creating the number on this and the number was 4.5, I think I might take the over just to be a contrarian and add the Vikings. Frank would hammer the under. This is a fun question for social media. You should hit us up at Yahoo Schwab, at Jason Fitz. Would you take the over or under on 4.5, the teams that actually could win the Super Bowl this year? Golly, that feels gross. That's
low, isn't it? For 3 weeks left in the season? Oof, wow.
All right, so let's get to one of those teams that obviously can win a Super Bowl, and it's the matchup of the day. It was the game of the day, the game of the century for this week, all of those things that you want to say. The Bills beat the Lions 48-42. I don't want the score to misrepresent the game because the Bills were in control of this game for the majority. Like, yes, there was a touchdown, but this thing in the fourth quarter was a 17-point game, and then they got it down to 10, and then they just sort of wiggled it around. The Bills went out, in my mind, and made a damn statement. And Josh Allen, it is not that long ago. Like, it was not that long ago that we were sitting here screaming about the Bills and their incompetent offense last season. The fact that they needed a true offensive coordinator. The fact that in the offseason, oh my God, you lose your number one wide receiver. They're asking Josh Allen to do too much. And I've said to you a million times that on our draft show, we got the knowledge from Damian Harris as he came in and said, look, internally, they believe that Josh Allen will account for 40 touchdowns no matter who is around him. Well, guess what? He hit that 35 number. He passed that 35 number. We got plenty of football left. Looks like the Bills knew what they were doing the whole time. And by the way, I don't know how you stop this version of Josh Allen. Because if you think you can stop him throwing the football, he's going to run around you. If you think you can stop him from running the football, the once wildly inaccurate quarterback today had a couple of throws on the run, Frank, that just had me sit there and saying, what did they do? What can they bottle? What can the Bills bottle and teach the rest of the world about developing a quarterback? Because by God, they've developed the damn MVP right in front of our eyes.
It's unbelievable the level he's at. And I wanted to go through this list with you because we're both old men, right? But we've watched the NFL for a long time. And there's only a few guys who have ever reached this level of playing quarterback. I truly believe that. I'm talking, this is a partial list. I'm going to miss some. 84, Dan Marino. 89, Joe Montana. 1994, Steve Young. 96, Brett Favre. One of those, 1999 or 2001 Kurt Warner years, or whatever his peak, whatever you want to put him at. 2007, Tom Brady. 2013, Peyton Manning. 2018, Patrick Mahomes. We're at that level now with Josh Allen, where you just, like the old Al Davis line about Joe Namath. I just saw a guy who tips the field, no matter which way he's going, he tips the field in his team's favor. It looks like he's always playing downhill. Josh Allen, he's unstoppable at this point. You're right. He had some plays, particularly some throws today, where you're just like, there's nothing you can do. If you're a defense, what can you do to stop this guy? And the answer is nothing. And that list of Hall of Famers, legends, MVPs, obviously, that I listed, Josh Allen's playing at that level. We don't see this very often. This is special. What we're seeing out of Josh Allen this season, and he's been Superman before in other years, but I think he's even better this year. I think this is rarefied air we're seeing. I mean, the last 2 weeks, that dude has 10 touchdowns, 5 rushing, 5 passing, and he just makes it look, I don't want to say easy, but he just makes it look like he's a pro player playing against college guys sometimes. Like, it's just, he's on a different level than everybody else. Very, very, very impressive. And I'm just so impressed with what he does because he took away his number one receiver, Stephon Diggs, in the offseason. He said, I don't get, like you talked about Damian Harris, kicking a knowledge about this, saying the Bills don't worry about that. They know what they got with Josh Allen. He's not exactly working with stiffs or anything, but he's elevating everybody. He's putting everybody on their shoulders. Very, very impressive. And I thought one moment kind of, it stood out to me, and it stood out to you too. And people are going to talk about Dan Campbell onside kicking it with 12 minutes left, only down 10 in the fourth quarter. And there's Dan Campbell again hitting on 20 in blackjack and all that. No. That was Dan Campbell saying, I can't stop Josh Allen. He's absolutely unstoppable. So I have to onside kick here. I have no other choice. I don't care what he says in the press conference. That was Dan Campbell saying Josh Allen is the unstoppable quarterback right now. He's 1984 Dan Marino or 1996 Brett Favre. Or pick an example. I need to onside kick it here. 12 minutes left, down 10, because I have no chance to stop him. That's how good Josh Allen is. He's your MVP this season. And before this week, I know I'm going on here, but before this week, when I saw BetMGM had him minus 400 to win MVP. Now, to non-gambling people, that's pretty much a lock. That's 80% implied odds. You have to bet 400 to win 100. Like, you're pretty much in lock territory. I thought, no way. Come on, Lamar could still steal this thing. Jared Goff plays better than him on Sunday. They go 16-1. Jared Goff will get some votes. Saquon breaks Dickerson's record. He's not a lock yet. I come out of this game saying, yeah, Josh Allen's your MVP. I don't care what Lamar does the rest of the way. I don't care if Saquon beats that Eric Dickerson record. This dude's on another level than everybody else.
He does make it look easy. You said you didn't want to use the word easy. I will. He makes defenders.
I never like saying that because it always makes it seem like he's just not putting it. He's just God-given talent and roll out the balls. But yeah, he's just on a different level. Dude.
No, but I think it's important here.
He's playing.
To your point, though, Frank, it's important here to stress that he does make it look easy because he didn't always. Like, what really blows my mind about Josh Allen. Watching him today on the one throw that we're probably going to see on SportsCenter 100 times, where he's rolling to the outside, he gets the defender to commit to him. He stops on a dime, and then he just delivers a rope downfield into a tiny window that turns into a long gain. And the whole time I kept thinking, this was a historically inaccurate quarterback. Like this is a quarterback that frankly everybody sat here and said you can't coach accuracy, and he has become the outlier to that, to the point that even when he can't follow through with the mechanics that you would think create accuracy, he's still wildly accurate with the football when he needs to be. And we're talking about a team that realistically, I mean, this is the number that continues to blow my mind. This team put up 48 points and had 548 points. 559 yards of total offense, and Amari Cooper had 0 targets. They didn't even throw the ball to Amari Cooper. Like, that shows that Josh Allen is playing so damn well that it doesn't matter who's around him. It doesn't matter what you try to do to stop him. Like, this team, the defense is going to be a liability. It looks like they're going to have to figure out how to get some stops. I understand that. Fine, we can have that conversation. That's a different conversation about the Bills. You can beat the Bills. I don't know how you slow down Josh Allen.
No, I don't either. And I mean, yeah, he completed passes to 9, 10 different receivers today. Ty Johnson's out there looking like, he's looking like Saquon Barkley because he's just downfield and Josh Allen's hitting him over and over and he's making plays. Like this is a guy again, who's elevating everybody around him. Just a phenomenal player to watch. And MVP is going to come, but I don't like Josh Allen probably does care about that. Let's be honest. It's a big time honor, but he knows that for his legacy, he needs to win that Super Bowl, at least get there. And this team, look, the defense, yes. If they would have ended up losing this game somehow, what would we have been leading off with? Oh my God, the Rams torched them and the Lions torched them. This defense is in trouble. So I get it. We shouldn't just ignore that the defense gave up 42 points today. But this team looked like one that, who would you, like at this point, look, the AFC Championship game is going to go through Kansas City. I think we know that. Like the Chiefs are up 2 or 3 games to play. It's hard to catch them, even if Mahomes misses time. We'll talk about that. The Bills could beat them though. Like I think the Bills are I do power rankings and I try to just be which team is better. I don't care about records. I had the Chiefs ahead this week, but truthfully in my mind, I think the Bills are a much better team right now than the Chiefs.
I have spent every week on this show with you saying it's stupid to bet against Kansas City because I respect the way they're winning. I don't think Kansas City stops this version of Josh Allen and the Bills, and I frankly don't care where the game is because realistically, this version of the Bills puts so much pressure on you from so many different places. And I don't know when you've got a quarterback that is playing as well as Mahomes plays at Mahomes' best. Like, I think right now, Josh Allen is playing the same way that we've talked about the best of Mahomes. So now, when there isn't a huge difference between the two coaches, now I'm looking across the board saying, okay, my question is today, in this year's NFL, can this Chiefs offense score the way the Bills can score? And the answer to that is no. I think the Bills are a better team. I think the Bills are going to go into Arrowhead. And right now, based on the information we have today, I would, for the first time all year, I'd be comfortable betting my house on Buffalo in that matchup against Kansas City. I know it's suicide to bet against Mahomes, but man, we all saw this. And I don't know how you take away what we saw in this matchup, which is a Bills offense that I don't think anybody can slow down.
No, and Detroit, look, I think Detroit has been clearly the best team in football for basically week 1 on. Like this is, but now, I mean, not anymore. Not after that. Like the Bills were clearly the better team, clearly, and that's a tough place to play. That crowd is into it, and it's just a great home field advantage the Lions have, and it just didn't matter to the Bills. I don't want to forget that they lost to the Rams a week ago. Like let's not forget that. Like that. Yeah. We're talking about them going on the road and beating the Chiefs. Well, you couldn't go on the road and beat Matthew Stafford. Like you didn't do that, but I think that I trust McDermott.
Yeah, but the Rams' offense is
right.
way better. The Rams' offense today is better than the Chiefs' offense.
Yeah, you're right. About
Stafford's not better than Mahomes, but like the Rams' offense is better than the Chiefs' offense.
I think so. Yeah. After Thursday night, you're gonna say that. But anyway, I get it. Yes, I think you're probably right. You're probably right about that. Let's talk. Like we've given the Bills their flowers, and they deserve them all. Where are you at with the Lions? Because you watch this game, and it's like part of me just wants to say, look, Josh Allen's on a heater, and he's just that good, and whatever. But in the back of my mind, I'm also saying, is this Lions defense going to cost them this dream season? Like this, that was a pretty startling performance by them in a bad way. You're at home after you really couldn't stop the Packers on Thursday night in week 14, by the way. That's why Dan Campbell went for it on 4th and 1. He's like, I can't stop Jordan Love in the last 40 seconds from getting in field goal range. And now they come out and give up 559. And it seemed like more. Like, I thought the Bills had 600 plus. They kind of slowed down in the fourth quarter because the Lions had time possession. Where you at in the Lions now? Like, I still think they're really, really good. I still think they could win a Super Bowl, but I'm worried about this defense. I don't want to go down this road because that really hasn't been the case since Aiden Hutchinson's injury. It's not like Aiden Hutchinson's out. Now they're screwed. They held the fort for, 5, 6, 7 weeks, whatever it was. But now you're seeing it kind of unravel a little bit on defense for the Lions. Where are you at with the Lions?
I'm wildly concerned about the back end of that defense, particularly. To me, it's not even just Josh Allen. It's that they had a hard time covering guys. They just did, and that's got to be part of the concern. When you talk about can the Lions beat up on anybody, I think the Lions, in my mind, over the course of today, went from are they the best team in the NFL to are they the third best team in the NFL right now? Are they the fourth best team in the NFL? Because, at the same time that we were all watching that game, we're also watching the Eagles. And my God, I wouldn't want to take on Philly right now. I just wouldn't. And so I'm looking at the Lions saying, okay, you can beat anybody, but that defense, you could lose to anybody any given Sunday. You take on a hot quarterback, you are going to lose with that defense. And look, in part it is because they're not getting home the way they need to rush in the passer. And frankly, that means that their guys in the back end got to cover longer, and that just didn't work. But it didn't work, and it won't work against a really good offense. So, this is, again, I'm trying not to overreact, but what the hell's the fun in doing this if we can't overreact a little bit? Like, I do think that there's a small element for me of looking around saying, I am, for the first time, genuinely concerned, and the Lions still on the tiebreaker. Important here, the Lions still today on the tiebreaker between the Lions and the Eagles, but they lost any wiggle room, and if the playoffs go through Philly, the entire playoff looks different in the NFC.
Absolutely, 100%. And the playoffs might go through Minnesota. Like the Lions haven't. We talk about this week after week, and it's been one of the themes of this season that the Lions were 12-1 coming in and had no breathing room. You felt like if they lose, like everything's in trouble. They play the Vikings week 18. That could be for the NFC North and maybe the number 1 seed in the NFC. Like that's absolutely crazy that we could have 14-2 teams playing in the final week just to see who wins the division. And one of those teams is going to be on the road wildcard weekend. Like that's zany to me. It does look like the Lions are going to have to win out to get that number 1 seed. They're going to have to go 15-2. And like you said,
how Lions would that be?
Like, I know. Can you imagine? You're waiting for this season all your life and you go 14-3 and you're playing at Atlanta, or at Tampa Bay, not Atlanta. And you're playing at Tampa Bay wildcard weekend? Like, that would be just crushing to those fans.
14-3, and you don't even get a home playoff game. Like, if that isn't the most Lions thing ever for a franchise, and I hate it. Like, I hate it for Detroit fans because this team is special. All the way to its core, this team is special. But you're right. Like, the weird part, we on the college level, we keep talking about Ashton Genty has a great year. It's tough to have a great year at the same time Travis Hunter has a great year, right? Like,
historic year, yeah.
We have to look at this and say, man, it's tough that 14-3, you got to feel pressure. 14-3 is going to leave you on the road through the duration of the playoffs.
Unbelievable.
That's unbelievable.
It's crazy. But the good news for them, it's still in front of them. You touched upon it. Tiebreaker. Right now against the Eagles, it would be conference record. The one silver lining here is that the loss the Lions took today wasn't a conference game. Like, they're in conference. So the Eagles have lost 2 conference games. The Lions have only lost 1. That's the tiebreaker you referred to. So they have it all in front of them. Go 3-0. Hey, there's something to be said about that. You want to be a championship team? Win 3 games. You got to bye. We can rest that week. Enjoy. Like, you have it all in front of you still. The Lions, like, as bad as this loss seems today because of the way they gave up all these yards and points to Josh Allen and all that, it's still all there in front of them. Nothing is gone. Nothing is lost. Just go win your last 3 games, and you're exactly where you want to be. So there's still that for the Lions, but now there's just a lot more questions about whether they can win those last 3 games or whether they can hold up in the playoffs when you're playing Philly, when you're playing some of these other really tough teams in the NFC.
Yeah, and part of all of this pressure comes from the Philly-Pittsburgh game. Let's get to that. Philly beats Pittsburgh 27-13. Eagles now tied for the number 1 seed, as we mentioned. Pittsburgh had an opportunity here, to try and keep pace with Buffalo. They do not. So as a result, they now fall 1 game behind Buffalo in the hunt for the number 2 seed, for whatever that is worth right now. But really, more importantly than all of that to me is that the Steelers' offense was exposed. I mean, we've been waiting for it. We've been waiting over and over and over again to see what the Steelers' offense would look like against a truly great team. And guess what? It did not look good. It did not look good at all. No George Pickens. I think we had to expect some of this. But, man, the Eagles came out as I thought they would. They made a statement with their passing game. They made a statement that says, hey, like, you guys spent all week talking about it. Like, frankly, we sit here, Frank, every week, and we talk about the drama in the Eagles. You know what makes it right? Sundays when they go out and win.
Yeah, I went 10 in a row. Like, this is... Look, I'll talk about this. I've already thought about it because I put a lot of time and effort into power rankings. We talk about it during the week, and as good as the Bills look today, they're not going to be my number 1 team. But the Eagles are number 1 team in football right now. They've won 10 in a row. Like, there's nothing they don't do well. And you talked about Steelers offense, and I agree with a lot of your points. They couldn't run the ball today. They couldn't pass the ball today. Like, their leading rusher had 14 yards today. Russell Wilson had 128 yards passing. Like, this was absolute shutdown, but that's the way the Eagles defense has been playing for weeks now. Like, this Eagles defense is really good. And look, Steelers offense without George Pickens just is so limited that they're going to have problems, but Eagles are excellent on the defensive side. We all know Saquon is just having a marvelous historic season. And then they kind of said this week, look, we talked about it Friday, like, what's going to happen? AJ Brown's going to go nuts because this is the squeaky wheel game. Of course he did. 110 yards, touchdown, all that kind of stuff. Very predictable, right? But I think it was almost the Eagles saying, like, we're going against one of the best defenses in football. You want to question our passing game? Fine. Jalen Hurts, 290 yards, 2 touchdowns. Each of our wideouts goes for 100. We could do it all. We could win any way you want. Like, you don't think we could pass the ball? We could pass the ball just fine. So this Eagles team is so well-rounded, so good on both sides of the ball. They're clearly, if you're talking about, like, who has more balance between the Lions and the Eagles, well, the Eagles defense just blows the Lions away right now as far as just, matchup, which team has a better defense. So it's the obvious answer is Philly. This is just a very, very good football team in every single way. And they do look like the best team in football now after the Lions took a really, really tough loss. We haven't seen the Eagles lose since, I believe, the first week of October. Like, this is a team on a roll. Very, very good football team. Steelers, like, I just think the Steelers kind of are who they are. They're very good. And I just have never trusted to say, like, yes, this team can win a Super Bowl. And I don't think you have either. Like, they're very good. Tomlin's put together a great year. I still think he's on a very, very short list for Coach of the Year, all this kind of stuff. But when it really comes down to it and they play a team like Philly, I just don't think they're quite on that level.
Look, Pittsburgh had 163 yards of offense, as you mentioned. The Eagles had 401. Pittsburgh managed 10 first downs in this entire game. Eagles 26. The time of possession was almost 2-1 in favor of Philadelphia. This wasn't just a win. This was an ass kicking in every possible way.
Against a good team. Against a good Steelers team. Like this.
Against a
good Steelers team. Maybe not great, but good. Very good.
But to your point, against a team that right now, if the playoffs started today, was looking at the number 3 seed, came into the day tied for the number 2 seed in the AFC, right? Like, so we're talking about a top playoff seeded team in the AFC. And what did we see? We saw that the Eagles will absolutely make you eat your limitations in every way, shape, and form, whatever those limitations are. And what did we see on the other side of it? Saquon was actually held in check for the most part in this game. So the Eagles came out and said, okay, we've got 2 wide receivers, can't stop. We'll just utilize them. Jalen Hurts was really good in this game. Jalen Hurts was really efficient in this game. It looked like the passing game was absolutely in rhythm and in control. And it's just a reminder, like, sometimes I think athletes, we all know they manufacture chips on their shoulders. Sometimes it's just on your mind where it's like, man, we got to focus on this week. And you come out the next week for all of the talk about drama and what's it mean. Well, sometimes maybe it's the kick in the ass that everybody needs to really get it in gear behind the scenes. Because this offense was in gear. The timing was so immaculate for their passing game. I just watched this and thought, yep, whatever the message was A.J. Brown was trying to send, instead of yelling about a receiver sending that message, maybe we should be praising him for doing it in the way he did, because it woke that passing game up.
100%. And when you saw AJ Brown speak at his locker this week. He almost seemed humored by how everybody blew this out of proportion, but it's Philly, you know. But what he said really resonated. He's like, you know what? If I got to be the bad guy and say it, I'll say it. Our passing game isn't good enough right now. And he talked about last year when he was like, we were 10 and whatever, I think 10 and 2. And then we fell apart down the stretch and got boat raced by the Buccaneers in the playoffs. He's like, I'm going to speak up now. I'm not going to wait for this to happen again. I'm going to speak up now. We need to get better as a passing game. And he said, that's not Jalen Hurts I'm talking about. That's me. That's the offensive line. That's the play calling. That's Jalen making his reads. That's everybody in the passing game. And again, he said, if I got to be the bad guy here, I'll be the bad guy. And I think it did wake him up a little bit. And Philly will never get complacent. Not in that market. They won 10 in a row. And it always seems like the sky's falling there for some weird reason, like you kind of alluded to. So good. Yeah, I look at that as, after hearing what AJ Brown said during the week, I looked at that as kind of a leadership moment for him to say, no, this is our standards higher than this. Even though we won 9 in a row at that time, our standards higher than this, and this is what we got to fix. And I'll come out and say it. And I'm not scared to come out and say it. They come out, they respond to that in a very, very positive way, have their best passing game in weeks, really, maybe of the season, and just kind of showed, again, we have something that needs to be fixed. Let's go ahead and fix it right now. And they did against one of the best defenses in the NFL.
All right, those were the two marquee games, but we got to get to Sunday night. We usually start with that. I can tell you this, certainly the best looking matchup because the neon greens and the all whites were crispy. And Frank, while the colors may have looked clean on the jerseys, the game was anything but. Seattle's offensive line, just a turnstile. The Seahawks get their butts whooped by the Packers.
This is a game that just has a lot of ramifications. We don't know about Geno Smith's injury. He had to come out. Sam Howell, I would say this about Sam Howell. Find someone who loves you enough to hold you as lovingly and as long as Sam Howell holds the ball in the pocket, because he just loved holding onto the ball and taking sacks. And when he wasn't taking sacks, he's throwing a back-breaking interception. This was never going to work with him. It's amazing the Commanders put up with him starting for a full season. It's a terrible game for the Seahawks, who were in first place in the NFC West. We're gaining momentum, 4-0 since the bye. And now all of a sudden, with the Rams pulling off an upset over the 49ers, slight upset, but still an upset on Thursday night, and then them losing this game Sunday, it really lessens their grip on the NFC West. We said this Friday, it does look like the Rams now are going to win that division, right? Like it's not a done deal, but it's going to happen. At least it seems to be. Things change in the NFL every week, as we know. The Packers are they're that team that's kind of flying under the radar. We talked about Super Bowl contenders, right? Are the Packers a Super Bowl contender? I can be talked into it because Jordan Love's looking healthier. He's playing better. The defense can make plays. Josh Jacobs added a dimension they didn't have. And I think we've just slept on the Packers because they're the third best team in our division. Well, they still might be one of the top 5 or 6 teams in football. They just happen to play in a division that's kind of historically good this season.
I can be talked into the Packers the same way week to week. I can be talked into whether or not I think the Seahawks are good or the Seahawks are a disaster, right?
Yeah, right.
I feel like a week ago, we finally came in and said, hey, it's time to give Seattle their flowers. They're on a good winning streak. Things look different. Everything, it feels like they've really turned a corner. That defense ahead of schedule. A lot of praise for the Seahawks. That all came crashing down in this game, in part because I think you did see that the best of the Packers is just really stinking good. And, frankly, how often do we say this? You look at good and bad in the NFL. If your offensive line has a garbage game, you are going to have a garbage game. That's just facts, right? And what do we see in this one? Whether it was
Geno was under pressure the whole time. Yeah,
Geno was just getting murdered back there, and then you put in Sam Howell, and it's like this isn't going to get any better. So if you're Seattle, certainly you miss Kenneth Walker III. I do believe that Kenneth Walker is a game saver for your offensive game plan, but this wasn't about Kenneth Walker not being there. This was about the fact that, frankly, when Seattle had to match up against a team that's offensively very good, they couldn't. And then when they needed to stop that defensive line, they couldn't. I look at this and I think, man, as confident as I was 5 days ago that the Seahawks are really good, I've lost all of that right now. And that's just overreaction to the moment. I don't want to be prisoner of the moment, Frank, but you can't take away the fact that they stunk.
So for you, this was more bad Seahawks than good Packers?
Bit of both. I think this was a reminder that the Packers are closer to being in that upper tier of the NFC. I do believe that they're right on the edge of that upper tier in the NFC, and the Seahawks are part of the good but not great category that sits in the rest of that conference.
Yeah, and as people probably heard this week, this was going around. A lot of people were talking about this. The Packers' 4 losses this year are against the Eagles, the Vikings, and 2 against the Lions. And those, those 2 teams or the 3 teams have 6 losses combined. Like, this is a team that,
but that's
look,
why,
you don't
Frank,
get extra credit.
That's why they're not a Super Bowl contender to me, though.
Yeah, that might be.
Because though every one of those teams you just mentioned are teams that we are saying are in that tier of Super Bowl contenders. So, like, that's why the Jordan Love and the Packers just sit right on the bottom edge of that. I really want to believe. I want to, but I just don't know if I can.
Yeah, it's hard to. They're going to have to win 3 straight games on the road against teams like that because they're going to be the 6th seed in the NFC. Like, it's crazy that a 10-4 team that looks as good as they have at times their ceiling is pretty much a 6th seed in the NFC. So yes, they'll have to figure out a way to win these games, and maybe they're just good enough team. They're good enough to make the playoffs with a really nice record, and they're good enough maybe to win a game in the playoffs, but maybe can't make that deep run like they surely hope they can. It's just, again, but you watch a game like tonight and you say, maybe this team is rounding into form. Maybe they're the team getting hot late in the season. I know the Eagles are really, really good. So are the Lions, so are the Vikings, all that kind of stuff. But the Packers, if this is their highest gear, this is pretty impressive. For as much as the Seahawks did wrong, the Packers forced a lot of those issues. Their defense really is playing a lot better. As we've talked about, Jordan Love finally looks healthy. Like, he really wasn't healthy since tweaking his knee in that first game of the season. So he looks like a different guy. They kind of got some character winning games with Malik Willis. So on a right day, I could be talked into the Packers being dangerous in the playoffs. It's still a stretch to get them to 3 straight road games against these elite teams to make the Super Bowl, but very, very good football team, and they showed that tonight.
I don't envy you making the power rankings. I don't envy us having to watch the rest of the Sunday. At least Sunday night ended with some good football. Let's break down the rest of it. We will break down the rest of the action after we take a quick break. All right, Frank, this is the part we actually get paid for. All right, we are so lucky we get to talk about football.
You get paid?
But we've talked about the games that
what?
we... Yeah, well, I mean, sorry, Stone gets paid. This is the part Stone gets paid for. We can talk about football. That's easy when you're talking about all the good stuff. Let's talk about the early games, because the early games were a big old bag of dog poop. I mean, there's just no nice way to say it. We will go through some of these extraordinarily terrible games where we were reminded of, guess what? Some of these teams suck, as we said earlier. Now, let's start with a level of suck we haven't seen in a minute. All right. Bryce Young takes a big step backwards. Like, every week it's been, oh, look at Bryce, look at Bryce, look at Bryce. Well, against the Cowboys, it was, ooh, look at Bryce. 2 interceptions, 2 fumbles, 4 turnovers altogether in this one. There's never been a long-term commitment, so we'll see what Canales decides to do throughout the course of the next week at the quarterback position. But this was a tough look for QB1 from last year's draft to come out and just get annihilated by a Cowboys team that, we may not think has anything to play for, but they came out and played hard in this one.
They really did. They played well. Bryce was under pressure a lot in this game. Not all his fault. I don't want to turn every game into a Bryce Young referendum, because he has played well. And yeah, he had a rough game this week. Okay, well, that's going to happen. Like, that does happen. Even the best of quarterbacks sometimes. Everybody except Josh Allen, right? So I don't want to turn this into like, oh no, the wheels are falling off for Bryce Young. But you do have to see how he responds to this. You want to see the next step be forward, hopefully, for him. I think we're kind of all rooting for Bryce Young, right? Like, whether it's just because he comes off really well, I've never heard really a bad word said about Bryce Young, or just that the NFL's better with more star quarterbacks. So I think we want to see Bryce Young succeed, but this was rough for him. I think the story out of this game really is Mike McCarthy playing himself back into this job, coaching himself back into this job, I should say. They've won 3 of 4. I get the loss was ugly because of the special teams debacle, then that's kind of coaching. But this team is playing hard. Cooper Rush is playing well, which I think reflects well on McCarthy. He threw 3 touchdowns today. This is a team that was really banged up, had nothing to play for when they fell to, I believe it was 3-7, and they've responded pretty well. They're not beating the best teams in the world, but they have, again, won 3 of their last 4. Is Mike McCarthy their coach in 2025? I mean, Jerry's never really come out and said Mike McCarthy's not my coach. Like, he's always been this loyal guy to Mike McCarthy. I'm kind of feeling like, if this continues and the Cowboys' last 3 games look kind of like their last 4, I think McCarthy's back in 2025.
Now that we don't have the whispers of Belichick right around the corner that everybody wanted to try and put together, which was always absurd. Now we've got, they have the Buccaneers coming up, then they have the Eagles, then they finish with the Commanders. I think, frankly, if they win 2 out of 3 of that, finish 8-9 for this season, yeah, I still think that there's enough forward momentum to justify bringing him back. And I know everybody's going to yell and scream about what hasn't been accomplished here, but I understand that we look at things, we view things through that prism. I just don't know that this year most teams can survive what they've gone through anyway. The roster isn't good enough. The injuries have been pretty catastrophic. The quarterback was hurt for a large portion of the season. If I'm Jerry, we all know that Jerry is pretty loyal. To your point, I think McCarthy is in a situation where he can still win this job back.
Yeah, it's certainly looking like it. And again, the last 3 games matter here. If they could crater, they could lose each game by 30 points. We don't know what's going to happen, but I've been impressed, honestly, by how, like, even the Monday night game, which we all know because of the punt, the guy touching the punt and the Bengals winning it after that. They played hard in that game. They probably were going to win that game if it wasn't for a guy trying to field a punt block punt when he shouldn't have. And it's not like Cincinnati's devoid of talent. They're a pretty good football team. So I've just been impressed with what I've seen out of the Cowboys the last 4 weeks. As crazy as that sounds for a team that we left for dead so long ago, nothing to play for, but they're playing well. They're playing hard, and like by Cooper Rush of all people. This isn't even like Dak coming alive. Well, no, Dak ain't there no more. And yet the Cowboys playing pretty good football.
The Chiefs played pretty good football today. They beat Cleveland 21-7. The Chiefs defense was really good in this. Jameis Winston was really bad. Jameis gets benched in this game.
Man.
4 picks. And this, you know what? I was ready this morning, Frank. I was ready to come into you and ask you the deep question, because this morning I got to thinking about it. I was like, man, Jameis is going to be starting somewhere next year. Somebody is going to give Jameis a chance. And no sooner did I say that than I watched him get benched because he was being the Jameis that we all know he could be. Like, he can put up massive numbers, but my God, just the stupid throws just don't make sense. And I know we all love Jameis because we love the personality that he has become at this stage in his life and career. Sometimes I feel like we have a little bit more grace and forgiveness when he plays like trash, but let's face it, he reminded everybody why he's not a standard starting quarterback in the NFL today.
Who he is not changing. He's going to have games like this where he just throws you out of it. I thought the Chiefs were really going to be vulnerable in this game. We've all talked about how many one-score games in a row they've won. They're on the road, bad weather. And when Jameis is playing well, he can move the team, but this was just a disaster for him. Dorian Thompson-Robinson comes in near the end of the game. I don't think the Browns really need to get that much of a look at DTR. I don't think he's very good, but it almost seemed like, okay, now we're just going to see DTR the rest of the season, which just a horrendous day for Jameis, who was building some momentum to be like, hey, maybe this guy can be our starter next year. Well, if he is, this is the kind of stuff you got to deal with too. I think too, the main headline out of this is, aside from the Chiefs finally winning a game by more than 7 points, the 2 main injuries. Nick Chubb breaks his foot, and I just feel so like, how can your heart not break for Nick Chubb? Like that, this is just, it was awesome to see him come back. Great comeback story from the knee last year. Hadn't played great, but he was out there battling, and then he suffers another injury. That's tough to see. It really is for him. And then obviously Patrick Mahomes. Like, Mahomes goes down late in the game, gets twisted up really, really awkwardly on a 4th down pass, and he's limping around at the end of the game. The fact that he's limping around leads me to believe that he'll probably be okay, but there's a report from NFL media that said he's week to week. That usually means like, hey, this guy might not play next week. I don't know how the Chiefs are going to play this. You don't want to get into a situation where you play Carson Wentz next week, you drop a game, and all of a sudden you're worried about the Bills catching you for the 1 seed, because they definitely don't want to go to Buffalo in January. They could win there, obviously, but they don't want to. I think Mahomes will play if he can. He's a tough dude for sure, but it's something worth monitoring going forward. If Mahomes misses any time due to this injury.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, and we've seen Mahomes take some weird rolls on his ankles over the years. Seems to always find a way to come back, which is kind of a statement here. But I think this is where we also have to look a little bit at the standings and kind of understand where they are. The loss for Buffalo was a pretty big blow in the playoffs, right? So if I'm the Chiefs and I know I have a little bit of wiggle room, I don't have a ton of wiggle room, but I have a little bit of wiggle room for the playoffs. I wonder if that impacts any of this, because with the playoff picture being where it is, you got a 2-game lead. Maybe you sit back for 1 game and you let him take 1 game off and see where it goes. So I can see them doing that for the Chiefs. It also feels like whatever the deal is with the devil that they have made this year, they continue to win football games somehow miraculously. He'll be just fine. I don't know how, but miraculously he'll be just fine.
It always seems to be. Like, again, he's a tough guy. He's played through this stuff before. I don't anticipate Mahomes is going to miss any time, but it's worth keeping an eye on for sure.
No doubt. Worth keeping an eye on. The absolute meltdown for Miami. I'm going to call it that. They lose 20-12, I should say. But Tua was awful. I mean, Tua was I feel like the guys that I've spent some time defending, where I've sat here and said, hey, this morning on FFL, on Fantasy Football Live, when we were getting ready for the day of fantasy football, I made the comment as I was wrapping up one of the analysts' takes on Tua and his productivity. It's like, yeah, maybe it's time we start revisiting some of these conversations with apologies, for the way we've talked about Tua, the quarterback. And then he goes out and just plays terribly in this game. And I'm looking around thinking, what the hell's wrong with Miami? Like, I understand this season went off the rails, and I understand health was a part of it. Health is not a part of it now. We have to remember, when we have the context of the failure of this season for the Miami Dolphins, which is where I think we'll be by the end of the year, that we need to remember that this Dolphins team was still in it when Tua got healthy at the end. Like, as much as we've sat here and we've talked about excuses for the team overall and their productivity and excuses for the coach and the play calling and the quarterback and all these things, let's remember the fact that they had the runway in front of them. They have now blown that runway with their quarterback healthy.
That's very true. It's true. Yeah, they've lost games with Tua, but now, I mean, not a great record with him. He had been on this really hot streak, playing well, but today the wheels did fall off. It was just a bad game. It was a bad game for Tua. They lose Jalen Waddle early to an injury that obviously didn't help. Tyreek Hill is just, I don't know what to make of him. You just wonder, like, his age, has he hit the cliff? Like, it's not the same Tyreek Hill out there. Jonnu Smith is basically the centerpiece of their offense right now, and that ain't good news. So, but this was a game where, yes, they had a couple chances in the fourth quarter. Tua throws interceptions to Derek Stingley both times. And it's just, this kind of, if there was any hope for the Dolphins, like somehow sliding in the back door, getting into playoffs, well, it's done after today. Like that, you can't take a loss like that. You had to steal a game like against Houston at Houston. Couldn't do it. I didn't think Houston, again, I keep watching Houston and I'm like, this team's not very good. Like, I was doing that today. I was like, yeah, okay, they won. Huzzah. That's what you got to do. But I don't come out of this saying like, wow, Houston, what a quality win. What a good showing by them. I just think this is just like in the NFC South. It's just a team that's just good enough to win a bad division. Maybe the Buccaneers are better than that in the NFC South, but the AFC South, I just think Houston's kind of whatever. They're there, and I don't think they're going to make any noise in the playoffs whatsoever.
At the end of the day, the Dolphins, though, are still the same paper tigers they were last year. They have 6 wins, but let's go back to where we started this whole show, assigning the word suck to certain teams. Let's do that again. All right, their wins over the Jags, suck. Patriots, suck. Rams, pretty good. Raiders, suck. Patriots, suck. Jets, suck. 5 of their 6 wins are against teams that suck. And we're sitting here like trying to figure out
2 quality wins. Yeah, they had 1 quality win last year. They got 1 quality win this year. You're not wrong. You're not wrong about that.
We got to remember they're going to finish the season against a 49ers team that has turned out to not be very good. And then the Browns, who, check me if you've heard this before, suck. And then the Jets, again, who also suck. Like, I just want to reiterate here that Miami, like I always say, I've said to you now for the almost 2 seasons we've worked together. There's a difference between saying I want my team to be good and I want my team to make the playoffs. Those are very different measurements, right? Like, because you can be a bad team and make the playoffs, and you can be a very good team and miss the playoffs. I want my team, my favorite team, to be consistently good. Because if you're consistently good, you can control more of the controllables. The Dolphins are not consistently good. They might make the playoffs sometimes, but they're not beating good teams, playing good football. They're not turning around. They have the occasional game that they win 7-0 that makes everybody rethink the whole way we view that team. But if we're being honest, all they did was beat trash last year, and all they've done this year, with the exception of the Rams, is the same thing. The Rams, who, by the way, were injured at the time. But still, if you want to look at it, they've not beaten anybody. There hasn't been a Bills-Lions moment for this Dolphins team that we can hang our hat on. Like, this is a bully that beats up on fat kids. Like, it doesn't really count.
Right. And is it going to get better next year? Really? Like, you need to hope that Tyreek Hill improves back to 1,900-yard Tyreek Hill, and he's not just on the backside now. We don't know, like the wrist injuries talked about, like maybe that's affecting him. Because it's an important offseason for the Dolphins, like you said, to kind of get off this hamster wheel of we're not really that good. Like, we have flashes, like we're not bad, but are we good? Well, to get there, you probably need a pretty good offseason coming up.
A couple of teams that need a good offseason, the Jets and the Jags. Yeah, they played a game today. 32-25, the Jets win.
This game was actually entertaining. Like,
okay. No. This second half was entertaining. Aaron Rodgers completed 3 passes in the first half. 3.
Fine. All right.
3. Yeah, but then in the second half, man, Devontae goes off 198 yards, 2 touchdowns in the second half. This is that moment, and our own C-Rob is out here with the thought that Aaron Rodgers and Devontae are basically auditioning for other teams. Man, I don't know if they just took the script at halftime and said, we're going to call it our way, or if they just stopped listening to the coaching. But this was a different team in the second half. And you're right. The second half was enjoyable football to watch.
Speaking of our good friend Charles Robinson, we co-own the Inside Coverage Fantasy Football team. We're in the playoffs right now, and he's texting me, freaking out. Oh no, Devontae Adams has a 0. We're screwed. And I was like, yeah, we actually might be. And then he goes 198 yards and a half. Like, it was incredible. Like, where's this been? Like, that was absolutely astonishing. The Jaguars stink. Like, you've talked about it. Their defense is god awful. This was an entertaining game in the second half, though. This actually gave us, this was probably the best game of the early games, right? Like, it wasn't very meaningful, but it was fun. And yeah, it's fun to see throwback games like Aaron Rodgers playing well and Devontae Adams doing this and that. Like you said, unless Aaron Rodgers retires, I don't think Devontae Adams is going to retire, but unless these guys are kind of going to might be on the market next offseason. And these kind of games, and the one like last week with Rodgers, kind of show like, hey guys, I got a little something left in the tank. Don't give up on me quite yet. And that's, if they can finish the season strong, it's going to definitely improve their market for the offseason.
I just want to hear what happened at halftime to make it all come alive, but I hope they can continue it because it was a lot more fun to watch. I want to give a slow clap, if you would allow me, to the New Orleans Saints today. I want to give a slow clap to the New Orleans Saints, not at all condescendingly. The New Orleans Saints lost to Washington 20-19, but you know what I love, Frank? I love when you've scored the touchdown at the end of the game, you got nothing to play for, and you go for 2. You go for 2. Like, this was a weird game in the sense that, frankly, the Saints started the prettiest quarterback most of us have seen in a long time. Great headshot. And then that didn't work. Haener gets benched. Spencer Rattler comes in. They looked much better under Spencer Rattler. I got a little bit of offense going. The Washington Commanders, it felt like they came out of the gates just on fire and then just sort of calmed down and just fell asleep throughout the course of this game. But kudos to the Saints for going for 2 at the end and not the tie because nobody wanted to see more of that game.
Yeah, by the end of this game, the Saints were down Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, Taysom Hill, and the Commanders still almost lost that game. Like, I come out of this game actually thinking less of the Commanders. Like, because if you are barely beating the Saints because they throw incomplete on a 2-point conversion at the end of the game, who are you beating in the playoffs? Like, that was troubling to me. Like you said, they started off looking great. Jane Daniels throwing a couple TD passes, and McLaurin, the 16-yarder was awesome. Like, you're like, wow, okay, the Commanders are back. They're taking care of business against a really honestly bad Saints team at this point because they're so beat up. And then the Commanders almost let that game slip away after leading 17-0. Like, that didn't leave me with a good taste in my mouth. Like, they started, I believe it was 7-2. They have not been the same team since. They've been pretty mediocre. And that's being kind. Look, I've been Team Commanders, my Commanders all season. I'm happy for the success they've had. They're probably going to make the playoffs, but this is a shell of the team we saw for the first half of the season. And almost losing to the Saints proves that they're almost running out fumes into the playoffs, and probably wildcard weekend they're going to get blown out by somebody.
Again, their wins, Giants suck. Bengals suck. Browns suck. Cardinals, not bad. Win over the Panthers, suck. Bears, suck. Giants, suck. Titans, suck. Saints, suck. We got to start looking at the fact that some of the teams that are in the middle class of the NFL this year have gotten the middle class by beating up on the fact that there are at least 10 teams right now in this league that are tragically bad. So everybody's picking up wins all over the place by just beating teams that don't really look like professional football teams. So, like, I'm with you. It's a great story for Washington, and I'm really happy for these fans to have a better ownership structure and a quarterback they can root for and a coach they can obviously root for and something they can be proud of as a football team. I think that's a truly beautiful moment. That doesn't change the fact that your team is beating up on a bunch of soft teams that all suck, and we're probably going to find out when they get to the playoffs that they're really not all that great. But it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch. I feel like I'm the dark evil one today, Frank.
Like you should be in the holiday spirit. You're definitely not. Like
I'm wearing a Grinch
cold to everybody.
Holiday Hoobie Wuddy. That's it. My heart needs to grow 2 sizes larger during the break. One more game that we have to get through before we go to that point. And Baltimore takes down the Giants 35-14. Baltimore very good. Giants not very good. Giants make a quarterback change due to concussion protocol on DeVito. And then obviously that got even more difficult for them as they were playing somebody at quarterback none of us had ever heard of. It's just, this game went about the way I think we all thought it was going to go.
The one thing I will say, we talked at the top of the show about how many true Super Bowl contenders they are. I'll open my mind to Baltimore being there just because of Lamar Jackson. He throws for 5 touchdowns today, a couple to Rashad Bateman. Now, if you count Bateman as one of their targets, Bateman, Flowers, Andrews caught one today. Obviously, we know what Derrick Henry is going to be. I can at least be talked into the Ravens being a Super Bowl contender because they have the coaching for it. They have the quarterback for it. I don't have a huge level of confidence in them, and beating the Giants tells me nothing. But still, when Lamar is out there throwing for 5 touchdowns, you're like, yeah, if it wasn't Josh Allen taking over this season, we'd be talking a lot more about Lamar Jackson and probably be giving him his 3rd straight MVP. It won't happen because of Josh probably, but yeah, Lamar, like this is Lamar, like 5 touchdowns, and we're like, yeah, Lamar, good game. He's awesome to watch, and they're not a team I'd want to play in the playoffs, and that sounds weird because of what do we talk about? Oh, Lamar's never won big in the playoffs, blah blah blah. But when they get in there, with the Steelers loss today, it's looking like the Ravens have a real shot to take this division. The Ravens aren't a team I'd want to be playing in January just because Lamar is just at the peak of his powers right now.
The Ravens defense is still a liability. They just took on a team
I agree with that.
But 100%.
But what is it? What is it now? Like, I mean, the Chiefs offense at times has been a liability. The Lions defense is a liability. Like there's not many complete team. The Bills defense might be a liability. Like the only complete team right now is the Eagles. Like that's it, really. Like if we're being honest. So somebody's going in and there's a lot of flawed teams. At least I'm getting one with John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson leading me.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Okay, we got more games to break down, including maybe the worst of all of them. We'll do that after we take a quick break. Frank, Cincinnati takes on the Titans. This is all I'll say about this. I believe it's the first game in NFL history where the teams combined for more than 25 penalties and 10 turnovers. Like that's what we got. Like, look, a ton of yards for Joe Burrow. The Titans absolutely stink. They bench Will Levis. You know how I feel about Will Levis if you've watched any of this show. And realistically, we end up in the same spot. The Titans stink. The Bengals stink, but the Bengals found a way to win.
Yeah, I continue to wonder if Callahan's a guy for the Titans. He has not had a good first season whatsoever. The one thing I wrote about, I let off winners and losers with this because I really didn't have a whole lot to write about from those early games. I had to pick something. What I see with the Bengals is they got to find a way to pay Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And I know like this ownership's never going to pay them, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I get it. It's hard, but the Eagles have figured out a way. And I think if the Bengals want to kind of stay in this realm of, hey, if we fix things in the offseason, we could be a Super Bowl contender. I think the only path to that is Burrow, who's playing lights out football. Like he's been as good as any quarterback in the NFL outside of Josh Allen, maybe Lamar Jackson. And you have these 2 superstar wideouts. Like that is what makes them special. The Bengals gives them a ceiling. I think they just got to figure out a way. I know it's not going to be easy, but Burrow kind of alluded to it this week of we need T. T is a need. He's not a want. He's a need. And I think the Bengals have to dust off the checkbook and figure out a way to get both of these guys back.
Yeah. Well, the Bengals owner, according to the Google machine, is worth $3.9 billion. So
That's
figure it out, make it happen, and then also buy an entirely new defense so you stop wasting one of the best quarterbacks in the game. Yeah. Arizona beat New England 30-17. We talk about every game. So I let you know that Arizona beat New England. New England's bad. Arizona, they break a 3-game losing streak. That is of consequence, given the way the day played out for sure.
Absolutely. And I mean, the one thing is Drake May continues to play well. Like, I think they got their guy. But the problem is you can't just say like, okay, we got Drake May, one good offseason and we can be right back on track. There's so many holes on that Patriots roster that this is more than a one-off season type of thing. Like, I guess you could have one of the greatest off seasons of all time and put together a team around Drake May that could compete with the Bills in a division. But it's good to see that they got their quarterback. That's a good foundation, obviously. But this roster is just bad. It is bad in many ways. Like the Cardinals didn't even look like they broke a sweat in this game. Like this is just kind of like, all right, we're going to roll out the balls and win easily. And the more time passes, the more it's like, how did the Patriots win at Cincinnati to start the season? That was absolutely mind-blowing. It still continues to be mind-blowing. This Patriots team is bad. The Cardinals are fine, I guess. And James Conner had a big day. Good for him. Kyler's still just kind of a shell of himself. He is not taking a step forward we thought he might this season. But good for them to win, and the Patriots got the quarterback. So those are the headlines there.
The Broncos beat Indianapolis in a huge win for them with the playoff standings, 31-13, and a big win for them. I know I've been tough on the Broncos. Bo Nix did not play well today. 3 turnovers, 3 interceptions in this game. He wasn't great in this game, and they still found a way to win, largely because of a big fumble by the Colts, and also because Anthony Richardson looks like he's just not ready to be an NFL quarterback.
Yeah. First of all, the Jonathan Taylor play. Guys, carry the ball into the end zone. Come on. Let's stop the whole we're going to be cool and drop the ball. I mean, Jonathan Taylor, of all people, one of the smartest players in the NFL. Like when he went to my alma mater, he was turning down like Harvard. Like he is smart dude. You got to be better than that. You got to know better than I'm going to drop the ball before I cross the goal line. Like that is just ridiculous mistake by Jonathan Taylor. That kind of turned around this whole game. It was going to be, I believe, 19-7 at that point, maybe 20-7, whatever, one of those two. And that happens, and it just seemed like the entire game kind of changed after that. Bo Nix did play bad. Like this was his worst game in a long, long time. But the Broncos still win. They get that weird pick 6 off of the, I think it was A.D. Mitchell trying to throw it back to Anthony Richardson. Nick Benito sniffs it out, gets a pick 6. Really cool play. But part of the reason the Colts were doing plays like that is because they can't run a conventional offense with Anthony Richardson. Like his final numbers didn't look terrible. I watched this game. Look, I'll give you a little inside info. Like one of my buddies, so we co-own a fantasy football team. We're in the playoffs today. We're looking at the weather report. Patrick Mahomes is our quarterback. We're like, I don't know that I trust Patrick Mahomes in this game necessarily. So who are we going to pick up? Let's pick up Anthony Richardson. Put him right in the lineup, right? He was on waivers. So I was watching Anthony pretty close in this game. And I can't tell you how many swear words I said at the old Buffalo Wild Wings in Highlands Ranch, Colorado. It was startling how many passes he just misses by a country mile. Like, he's just not accurate enough to be an NFL quarterback right now. And I don't know that changes. And getting back to the Josh Allen conversation, how many teams are going to make mistakes in the draft because of Josh Allen? How many teams are going to say, we can fix him? Look at Josh Allen. Like, that seems to be what happened with the Colts. They said, who cares if he's inaccurate and he's barely played football? We can fix him. And they can't. Everybody was so up in arms about like, oh, how could you bench Anthony Richardson for Joe Flacco? And now the Colts look stupid because Anthony Richardson had one good game when he came back. And now he's just back to where he was. 3 straight games, not completing more than 50% of his passes. He was dreadful in this game, like really, really bad. And I just don't know where the Colts are going with Anthony Richardson. We have to start talking about, can the Colts go into 2025 with Anthony Richardson as their quarterback? He's just not at an NFL level right now as far as his accuracy goes. You can't run basically conventional offense with him because he just can't keep drives going because he's so inaccurate with the football.
Especially given the fact that for the second straight year under Shane Steichen, they are right on the precipice of the playoffs. This is a team that if they have
win
any
today,
sort of if they have any sort of competent quarterback play, they're a playoff team.
If they win today, their final 3 games were against the Giants, Titans, and Jaguars, I believe. Maybe the 3 worst teams in the NFL, or 3 of the 4 worst. I'm sorry, Fitz. So it's like, if you win today, you're going to win out. You can go to the playoffs maybe, but they just blow this game. Bad on Jonathan Taylor, bad on Anthony Richardson, and just the Colts, like, it's just that they have a long way to go because they got to figure out this Anthony Richardson thing. And I don't know how easy of a solution that is.
Biggest shock of the day to me, honestly, in the last outcome, Tampa Bay absolutely just throttles the Chargers. I mean, Mike Evans was a man-possessed. Baker May. I watched Sunday Countdown this morning on ESPN for a few minutes, and I hear them talking about how Baker Mayfield needs to be smart in this game and understand he doesn't have to be aggressive, no mistakes, like play a smart football game. And I heard a couple of the analysts say, I don't know, that's not really Baker. Baker came out and was wildly aggressive. Like some of those throws were just, he was taking shots, and I just didn't think the Chargers were ready. They didn't expect that strategy. Knockout punch after knockout punch. Mike Evans, just absolute beast mode there. If you have Mike Evans on your fantasy football team, take a lap. Congratulations. My God, the Buccaneers, who have not looked great in this game, looked like world beaters, and the Chargers just looked like they weren't ready to play at all.
Yeah, surprising because the Chargers have been a pretty good team, dealing with a lot of injuries. I get that. Justin Herbert seems like he just takes like some bone crunching hit on every single pass now. Like
Yeah.
he's just for a team with a good offensive line, he is taking a lot of hits, and I'd be worried about that if I were them. Taylor Heineke comes in at the end of the game, just basically give Herbert a break. Like they knew it was over, so you don't want to expose Herbert to any more hits. He's really limping to the finish here because he must wake up every Monday morning and barely be able to get out of bed with the punishment he's taking. Tough dude, keeps playing through it. I'll give him that. But the story here is the Buccaneers. Look, from about 6 games left in the last year in the regular season to right now, the Buccaneers have been a really good football team. And we kind of lost sight of that. We got so excited about Atlanta, right? Oh, hey, Kirk Cousins and all that. But the Buccaneers took some losses early in the season they shouldn't have taken. Should have gone for 2 against the Chiefs. Shouldn't have blown that game against Atlanta, et cetera, et cetera. But now you look and they have a performance like this. You say, the Buccaneers are a pretty good football team. They're not a team that's just, hey, we're going to go play the Buccaneers a wild card weekend and we're going to blast them. Just like last year when they, blew out the Eagles in round 1 and gave the Lions all they could handle in round 2. It's going to be similar for the Buccaneers this year when they win the division, and they will win the division because the Falcons are frauds. The Buccaneers are going to win that division. And I assume, depending on who they play, like they're going to play the Packers, and the Packers are probably going to be like everybody's, picked to win, or they're going to play the Vikings, or whoever it's going to be. They're going to play somebody really, really good in the wild card round, and everybody's going to pick that team and forget that the Buccaneers have been a pretty good team for a calendar year now. Hats off to the Bucs. They really proved today that this is a good quality football team.
All right, Monday Night Football, we got a doubleheader. Chicago at Minnesota. Minnesota favored by 7. I got the Vikings rolling big in this one, especially with everything they've got left in front of them. They're charged up after watching that game today for the Lions. What do you think?
I like underdogs. I'll take the Bears because before last week when they looked so bad, the Bears gave the Packers, the Lions, and the Vikings all they could handle in 3 straight weeks. I'd like to think the Bears are still competing and at least give us something decent to watch because the nightcap. Oh boy, I'm sorry, Fitz.
Raiders a 5.5-point underdog to Atlanta.
Yeah,
let me
get
say
to watch
this.
Max anymore. We can't even watch Max anymore.
Yeah.
Like
no Max Crosby. Frank, if Stone cuts this off, I hope he cuts this off after the game because the game will make a big difference here. But I'll say this: if the Raiders lose, this feels like a nail in the coffin game because the Falcons are going to suddenly wake up and Kirk Cousins is going to just beat the snot out of you, which is going to be just tough to watch, or he doesn't and Michael Penix Jr. gets in this game. I keep thinking that that's going to happen. If Michael Penix Jr. gets in this game, all of a sudden Mark Davis is going to be looking at the quarterback that many people reported he wanted if he couldn't get Jaden Daniels. He's going to be looking at his own organization, his GM and head coach, and saying, how did we just get beat by this guy and why did we not get him? Like, why do we not have a quarterback? This feels like the sort of game that if and when I believe the Raiders get rolled, if they get rolled, I just wonder if that's the sort of thing that Mark Davis looks at. He said he won't make any decisions till the offseason. I wonder if this game will be a big part of that decision-making.
Very interesting. And yeah, like you said, like if the Falcons lose this game or even don't look very good in this game and kind of squeeze out an ugly win or something, then it's just, what the heck has happened to the Falcons type of time. But I don't think so. I think the Falcons just going to absolutely roll the Raiders in this game. Just because, again, a Raiders team without Max Crosby is, what are we doing? Desmond Ridder is a quarterback. You don't have Max Crosby. Like, I think this one gets ugly, like really ugly. Brock Bowers might catch 25 passes for all I know because he's the only good thing on the field anymore for the Raiders. But yeah, if the Falcons don't roll here, then something's really wrong in Atlanta. And no offense to you, Fitz, but this is the kind of get-right game that the Falcons need. Like, if you have any prayer of catching the Buccaneers in that division, you better cover this. You better win by double digits because this is a Raiders team that just wants the season to be over.
I'm going to spend Monday night with the game on the TV, in the background while I sit there with my laptop wildly high and suddenly looking at Shedeur Sanders highlights to make myself feel better about it. All right, that's a hell of a way to end an episode. Jory will be back with us Wednesday. I can promise that she won't be wildly high. Stone doing God's work, editing the show. I can't say one way or the other for him. He's on the clock. And in the meantime, we appreciate you guys hanging out with us. As always, follow him on Twitter at Yahoo Schwab. Follow me at Jason Fitz. You know the rules. Rate, review, subscribe. Tell everybody to hang out with us every single episode. We genuinely appreciate you guys. Have a great night.